Well, Hunter Biden is playing the victim in a brand new interview as we learn bombshell new details about his second indictment. The first son is facing 9 new criminal charges for allegedly not paying for more than $1.4 million in taxes, while at the same time blowing that cash on his lavish lifestyle. From the indictment, quote, the defendant spent his money on drugs, escorts, and girlfriends, luxury hotels and rental properties, exotic cars, clothing, and other items of personal nature. In short, everything but his taxes. If convicted, Hunter could be spending the next 17 years of his life in prison. But never mind his corruption. Hunter Biden telling musician Moby in a new interview that Republicans are only concerned about him as a way to destroy his father's presidency.
In their most illegitimate way, but rational way, they're trying to destroy a presidency. And so it's not about me. In their most base way, what they're trying to do is they're trying to kill me, knowing that it will be a pain greater than my father could be able to handle.
Hunter's attorney is also blaming Republicans. He thinks the political pressure from GOP lawmakers played a role in beefing up the charges after the first son's sweetheart plea deal fell apart.
What happened between June 20th and yesterday? The facts didn't change. What changed was the enormous political pressure that was put on the U.S. attorney when he made a deal that was appropriate for what the facts and law showed, to him deciding, I don't want that grief any longer. I don't want to be ridiculed by the Republican Party, of which I'm a member. So I'll just be a tough guy. And now I'm going to take 2 pages of a misdemeanor where millions of Americans file late and turn it into a 56-page document. As if his name wasn't Hunter Biden, this would not have happened.
So how's Joe Biden feeling about the second indictment of his son? Well, it seems like he's too busy thinking about which celebrities he'll be hanging out with tonight at a fundraiser in California. Watch him completely ignore reporters asking about Hunter.
Any comment on the new charges against your son, Mr. President?
Well, Judge, I think you disagreed with Hunter's attorney there, Abby Lowell.
I got to tell you, if I were ever in trouble, I would hire Abby Lowell. But he's wrong here. Look, the truth of the matter is that he had a plea deal that even the Department of Justice could not justify. Even the Department of Justice, when questioned by Judge Naraka, said there's no precedent for anything like this. So, you know, Abby, with all due respect, don't tell me that, you know, this is that nothing has changed here. What has changed is the fact that Hunter Biden is being held responsible and accountable. This is not a guy who filed late returns. This is a guy who didn't file returns. And you know what? For everybody, including the Associated Press, who says, well, you know, he was an addicted son, I'm here to tell you that his tax failures were post-addiction issues. So stop with this. He was a druggie. I mean, first of all, how smart? I mean, I couldn't take out $1.6 billion from a Citibank account where I do my banking. I mean, he was involved in human trafficking, money laundering. He was a foreign agent. None of that stuff was filed here. This is nothing more than lipstick on a pig. All they did was take the same charges and then tell us everything we already knew about this dirtbag's lifestyle. And I'm referring to Hunter when I call him a dirtbag. And let me say this, no one's trying to kill you. People are just trying to make sure that there is the same justice for you as there is for everybody else in America. And let me just say one final thing, and that is that for those who say, oh, Joe Biden has nothing to do with this, you've got James Comer and Congress trying to do what the Department of Justice and the FBI should be doing, 327 emails with Joe Biden using a pseudonym instead of his real name, contacting members who are partners of Hunter Biden, lying he didn't know about his son's businesses, lying that he never did business with China, didn't do anything illegal with China. China, didn't take money from China, and lying when he said he didn't do anything illegal, period. You know what? James Biden got money. We still don't know where $20 million has gone into those shell accounts. James Biden sent money to Joe Biden, and we still haven't seen a memo that indicates it was a loan.
You know, Harold, Hunter's attorneys are trying to make the case that nothing has changed here, but we did see a change in the sense that these IRS whistleblowers came forward to talk about what they were and were not allowed to pursue. So I think it's important to listen to them again now to remind them of what they were saying.
It appeared to me, based on what I experienced, that the U.S. attorney in Delaware in our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials as well as other U.S. attorneys. A number of times we were not able to follow the facts.
Prosecutors instructed investigators not to ask about the big guy or dad when conducting interviews. Investigators were not allowed to follow up on WhatsApp messages from Hunter Biden's Apple iCloud backup, where he suggested he was sitting next to his father.
And Harold, these were not Republicans. They were career IRS investigators who were making these assertions.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. First of all, good to see everybody. It doesn't matter to me what any political party anybody's in. When you're accused of something, the greatest thing we have in our nation, our judicial system, and our legal system affords is a presumption of innocence. Every American gets that. It is curious. President Trump has said over and over again with what he's facing that he would not be facing some of the charges he's facing if his name was not Trump. And Mr. Lowell said that, I think Hunter Biden even said that he would not be facing these charges if he were not named Biden. So both of them are using a similar kind of political argument. Two, I have not read the indictment closely enough, although I read summaries of it, and this is a serious indictment. Yeah. And there's jail time that goes along with this. Hunter has said that he's innocent, and we give him that presumption. We'll have to wait for the facts to come out and for a trial to be held. I do think, with regard to the witnesses that you showed, Katie, at the start of your asking me the question, this all blew up, remember, because they went into a courtroom in Delaware, and the two sides did not have a meeting of the minds about what the plea agreement was about. Hunter's team thought it would cover everything, that it was a global blanket immunity agreement, and the Justice Department thought it pertained only to the matters that, I think, the gun stuff and some tax stuff in a couple number of years.
The Justice Department knew because they hid it in the plea deal regarding the gun.
And the judge was upset.
Okay, well, let's just get back to the facts. I understand people around here want to see him buried and want to see his father.
No, I just want to see justice.
And so do I. So in that courtroom, the greatest thing that happened in a courtroom, Judge, that hearing was held to defend the defendant, to let the defendant know when you plead guilty to something, you get to go before a judge, and the judge explains, you understand what you're pleading to. And guess what? Neither side understood. You may say the Justice Department knew. I don't know what
they wrote it up. How could they not understand it? The Justice Department wrote it up.
So what happened was the outcome was what you want in the judicial system.
Yes.
The court said you all are not in agreement, so this thing is off the table.
This is corrupt. Wow. It's never been done before.
So, right. Well, whatever the case, the court said this is not. You all do not have an agreement. So, Katie, even when those whistleblowers, what I was trying to get at, Judge, the whistleblowers did what they did. They didn't do this. It was that judge that put us where we are because she said, you guys do not have an agreement. Now, I think if I were in Hunter's shoes today, I would be disappointed that I didn't sign that agreement because you would have at least taken some of those charges off the table. So where we are today, the only point I'm making, guys, when we get the facts and he goes before a jury and if he's convicted, guess what? He'll have to face the proverbial legal music. And if that is not the case, if he's acquitted, then
it's a new indictment, 58 pages, lots of salacious details, Pete. And the number one thing is about the taxes on money, but how did he get that money and who are his partners? And the media is going out of their way to try and distance Joe Biden from the indictment. Listen.
No mention of Joe Biden, no reference to Joe Biden in the indictment.
Hunter Biden is not President Joe Biden, and there is no allegation in the 56-page indictment that the president did anything wrong.
Hunter Biden, he was never worked in the White House. He's not running for office. And this is a false equivalency being set up by Republicans.
I don't see any link in the indictment or even in Comer's statement to Joe Biden. So we'll see. We'll see if James Comer has the goods.
Point.
Yeah.
And there's yet to be any evidence that President Biden had anything to do with the criminal charges his son now faces.
So we move from never being in business, never knowing about business, to not being in the indictment.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the media does. They're going to cover for him. Ultimately, it's so telling of the moment. We're told that this is justice. Harold, you said it's a serious indictment. And on its face, it is. But it's the exact opposite of justice. Why drop it now? Well, he's about to testify before James Cover, where he's going to have to answer questions. Now he's under investigation. Can't talk about that anymore. No more. Will he really see justice? Everyone's saying 17 years. You hear other people out there saying there's no way it's going to be 17 years. And even if he was found guilty, what's Joe going to do before he leaves office? He's going to wave his magic pardon wand. Okay? This is the opposite of justice. They don't mention his lobbying, maybe one sentence about lobbying. They don't mention anything about suspicious activity reports, about pseudonyms and e-bills, about international money. I think there's one sentence in there about money from Russia and China. They know exactly what's there, and they found the easiest thing to say, okay, he didn't pay his taxes and he paid hookers instead. Okay, let's throw the mini little book at him, call it justice and call it even so we can compare it to Trump, which is an entirely different circumstance.
So, Jimmy, do you want to enlighten us about the jokes you have decided to pull
Stop
out
it. I had a
this
point
indictment?
here. I had a serious point. First of all, reacting to what Hunter said to Moby, okay? They're not trying to destroy Biden's presidency. Biden doesn't need help destroying his presidency. The guy is polling behind ISIS right now, okay? He's at like 27%, okay? But to the Hunter point, I give him a D in accounting, but I do give him an A on how he spent the money. I'm not going to lie. Fast cars, fast women. Okay, if Ukraine's sending me $5 million, I got to be honest with you, the docket looks very similar to the way it looks now. But the point is, they wouldn't send me the money because my dad wasn't the sitting vice president of the United States at the time. And what we keep coming back to as an alibi is this. Well, Hunter didn't work in the government. Exactly. So why was Biden emailing him government information under a pseudonym while that money was flowing into the Biden bank accounts? And by Biden bank accounts, I'm talking dozens of shell companies that ultimately wound up with the grandkid, like every family who has nothing to hide. And that's the bigger takeaway here. They interfered in the 2020 election, and we all know they did. Why? Because we were told this isn't even a thing. You can't talk about this, not a thing. It'll wrongly influence the election. Now we're sitting here with guilty pleas to the very money we knew was a thing. Scam.
Scam. All right. Up next, the cowardly.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.